we'll record. So, all right, we're in Kuf Vav, which I don't believe the Machaber put the titles on this Simanim and the Shulchan Aruch. This one, if he did, it was not a Yosef Karo. I expect more out of you. You're like one of the great geniuses of history. Din Heach Mevatlim B'Shishim, which I don't think describes this Siman at all. I mean, because it describes a lot of Simanim, maybe but let me ask this: at least in my head, three major concepts that show up in the Shulchan Aruch Ramah world here. Um, there's maybe more in some of the other stuff, but that show up here. Some of it in the Ramah, some of it in the Shulchan Aruch. See if you can read my mind. What are the concepts that are going on here?
None.
Hanan, great, exactly. Hanan, which has been throughout, but Hanan is going to be is a major concept here. Um, and both Hanan, we're going to see it. Well, one way that I want to because then give away another concept, but also we're going to see questions around Hanan in Lach Belach as well, and how that plays out. Okay, good. What else?
Heat.
So say it again, Josie.
Heat.
Heat. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. You're right. It is. That's the fourth concept I hadn't thought about, but heat does definitely show up here. We're going to get into the question. Actually, it's really because the whole idea of a Devar Gush being a Kli Rishon is going to be a major part of like taking when you have 65, let's say more than 60, 61 sizzling pieces and one of them's chalev attached to it and taking out that piece with the chalev ahead of time, right? That thing is still cooking when you take it out. It's still a kli rishon, even though you've taken it out of the pot, and therefore it can become an isur, right? That's going to be a major. I didn't make that up. That's in here. That's in the siman. I know that it is. So, but yes, no, people with me on that. That's good. What else?
I think lurking here is also if Charlotte Sochato Asur.
Thank you. Yes, that is the jackpot one. If Charlotte Sochto, it's connection to Hanan. It's Efshar Sochto Mutar, Efshar Sochto Asur, and also sitting behind this is Efshar Sochto fill in the blank.
The same as Hanan.
I know. Good. Is it the same as Hanan? And even if Efshar Sochto is Mutar, is it Efshar? Right? Can you do it? Like, is it just a theoretical discussion and food doesn't actually do that? Right? Which is whose position?
Wait, sorry, say it again. I was
That if Shalom is mutar, but food doesn't actually, in reality, b'mitzias, doesn't actually sochet completely.
that sounds like the Rashba.
That is the Rashba. Yeah, that is the Rashba. Right? The Rashba who doesn't hold Hanan, right? But he holds that
Well,
once the piece becomes Asur, it's stuck in that Isra state, not because Afshar Sochto is Asur, but because Afshar Sochto isn't possible. It's not Afshar, right? Yefshar. Afshar Sochto, Yefshar. That's really kind of the way he understands it. Good. There's one other concept that I saw here, which is really well, it's not in the Shulchan Aruch, which I think is the whole thing. And then the Ramah does the Ramah actually bring it up? Or is it just maybe even the Ramah doesn't say it. Yeah, he doesn't. But all the poskim on the poskim, all the achronim on the Shulchan Aruch bring it up. Um, think about the Chalev case. Well, let's put it this way. Even if you
well,
don't, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, once again, heat, cool. Does it congeal? Does it spread? What is the action of fat in this case? Since we're no longer in the milk and meat case, we're in the
Um,
everything but.
Not what I was looking for, but good.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, don't apologize. Yeah, shame on you for not reading my mind. Eitan, you have it?
Is Davuk
Yes, Isur Davuk, right? The Mechaber does not hold this concept of Isur Davuk. The Ramah does, right? Which is aside from Hanan, even if you don't hold Hanan, if you have 60 plus pieces of kosher meat and one piece of unkosher meat, and they are and the unkosher, not excuse me, you have 61 pieces of kosher meat, one of them has chalev davuk to it, right? If you hold Isur Davuk, does it matter if you took that piece out first? No, because it's already asur because it's davuk, and therefore, like it has preferential blia pleta going on there, right? Um, but if you don't hold Isur davuk and you hold that all the forces are equally marshaled against that chalev, then you do it, which is the machaber holds. Then taking it out first is problematic because now it's become asur. So okay. Anything I need to add to all of that? That was my fun of concepts. Did you? I
I
missed Shir
didn't
on.
understand that last thing about Mechaber does not hold Isser Davuk, so that means that it's more of a problem in which case when you pull it out.
Yeah, when you pull it out first. Yes.
Why?
Because at the moment it's everything's mutar. All right, you have 61 pieces, or
Yes.
you have a ratio of 60 to plus to the chalev, and everything else in there is mutar. But if you pull that sizzling hot piece with the Isur Davuk to it, then it now becomes Isur because you pulled it out and it no longer has all the other forces to marshal against the chalev.
That's also essentially what the Torah was saying, no?
Yes, but if you hold Isur Davuk, that's a problem.
But if I hold Isser Davuk, isn't it just bad when it's in the pot too?
Exactly. So it's already a source. So pulling
It
out
already has source. There's no change.
exactly. So pulling it out first is actually the
That's right.
best solution. You don't have to wait for it to cool down anymore. Just pull it out.
And discard it.
Yes, obviously. Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, in the Mechaber's idea here, you let it all cool down, and the piece that is davuk to the chalev is still mutar, and you can just cut the chalev off, and you're good. Yeah, maybe you take a little bit of layer there or something, but that piece itself has not become asur just because it's davuk to the chalev. But in the Ramah world, it is davuk to because it's davuk to the chalev, it automatically becomes asur. There's no question about it. And that's it. We can go home now. We did everything. Did you get into these concepts in Shira? Because I missed. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good. It's Rav Nachman taught. Rav Nachum taught. I'm giving him. He's an Amora. Yeah. The Rav Nachum taught, and so I figured he would. All right. Any other things that came up in Shira that we should talk about before we dive into the Shulchan Aruch? Any other concepts?
I think just, part of what would be helpful for review is to sort out almost like in a chart how the different opinions and their feeling about the connection between Efshar Lesochto and Hanan.
Yeah.
How separating them becomes this sort of novelty for certain shitot, but is not as relevant to other shitot.
Yeah. Well, I think to begin with, if you hold, right, if Charlotte Sochto Asur, you have to hold Hanan. I think the two are coupled there, right? Um, so like, if I have a piece of something that absorbs um Isur, and well, I don't have to actually. I can still assume
Right,
no.
I thought we saw an option of not
Yeah,
actually.
you don't. Yeah, you don't. Sorry. I apologize.
Some people think that they assume that, of course, that's
Yeah.
what the intention of those two concepts are, is that they're in link, they're synced. But I
Yeah.
think we found at least one version where you could uncouple them.
Yeah, somewhere in my Shulchan Aruch, I wrote myself a chart. I can't remember where I did it, and I have to go
That's the
find
chart.
it.
That's the chart I want.
Yeah, I'll have to go find it. But no, good. So there's an opinion that says Afshala Sochto Asur, but that the thing still is only Oser, the amount of stuff that it absorbed. That's the Hanan split from Afshala Sochto Asur, right? You can say Afshala Sochto Asur, right? But the thing still only has the power to infect the amount that it absorbed and not the amount of the entire thing, right? People with me on
This
that?
is the Bach.
That sounds
I feel
right.
like I saw that we saw this in the Bach.
I believe that's right. Okay. So there you can split Hanan from Hashav to Asur. Right? The Rashbad does something interesting in the other way where he says Efshar Sochto Mutar. I don't hold Hanan, right? If you say Efshar Sochto Mutar, then you can't hold Hanan. All right. I think that's right. But that nonetheless, the piece itself is always a nevela. It just doesn't infect the amount of a nevela, like as if the whole piece is a nevela. So he goes the other way, right? He thinks that it's only the amount that it absorbed that it infects, and he thinks it's mutar. It's just not physically possible to ever completely get rid of all the isur in it.
The Ralbag.
The Ralbag holds that, you say?
No, you just, I'm sorry, was it the Rashba?
Rashba, the Rashba.
I don't know
That's
why I thought I heard you say
yeah.
Rambam. Okay.
I was gonna say the
The
Ralbag.
Rashba says, right, of
Yeah,
course. Efshar
Ralbag doesn't
l'sochto.
get into this stuff.
So efshar l'sochto mutar, aval I efshar l'sochto,
Yes, exactly. It's not a, it's a physical non-reality to him.
or you're just not sure also as part of it. You can't
Yeah,
be
it could
sure.
be. It's interesting. Like if somebody came to the Rashba from, the scientific lab and said, "Actually, we found a way that you could do this." Right? There is, as a side note, there is, I think there is one case where everyone agrees if Charlotte Sochton Mutar and possible,
Is
and
it
many.
Chal with all the right uh
Oh, that's an
with
interesting question,
with
but
all the right
not
Shetiv
really.
Erev and every and
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I don't know if I wasn't thinking Kachal.
yeah.
But I mean, I guess actually a second one. There is the blood, right? The blood question and slee, right? There are you can get blood out with slee, so that is maybe a possibility. Um, but I was thinking kalim, right? Kalim is a case where we say, yeah, you can, but it's food. Food is the question, right? Everyone seems to agree that you can get Isur out of kalim. Well, that's not true. You can get Isur out of kalim that are not
Thank you.
klicheres. So but we do have a
Yeah.
principle that all non-klicheres kalim are kosherable. That really as far as and there might be somebody out there who doesn't say that, but if someone says something isn't kosherable, it's because of one of two things. It's either because they think it's a type of klicheres, or they think it's just not physically possible to kosher, like the thing will break if you stick it in boiling water or something like that. So. Um, or like it has too many cracks, or like screws that you can't actually get to everything in it. But maybe if you could potentially take it apart or sand it down, it'd be fine. So, um, okay,
To go back to the Rashba to get this
yeah,
Chazarah really good. So he says efshar sochto mutar, but we don't think you'll ever always be able to sochto. So he does not hold Hanan, but because you can't really be sure of your sochto, he holds that piece itself is still asur even when it's not Hananing.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
And we see that, right. He bases on the kachal sugya, right? If I'm not mistaken, right, where the kachal falls into a second thing, we still say that it's oser bechulo, right? Because we don't know kama nafek mine, did it
Mm.
actually, and so we never know, so we go l'chumra on that whole thing.
So the
Wait,
piece, yeah,
no, or go.
I would just say the piece stays asur when
Mhm.
it's in the mixture. So that means I have to remove it, even though I'm only measuring against the amount that's baluabo,
Yeah,
right? If I can't find it,
Is that
it,
is do we
then
come
it's
back to
going to
the
still be
case
batel, right?
yeah, it
but
can be that'd be but the
but
piece
you
tell yavesh yavesh kind of thing, right? So.
because otherwise if it's royally kaved, we come back to this, you can't find it because it's, not significant.
Yeah, good. Well, Ra'uli Kabed we'll get into too because that's an interesting question. It's not Basar B'chalav and it's only Asur because it's Balua, right? Isur, it's Baleh Isur. Then it can't be Ra'uli Kabed. And Basar B'chalav being the exception there. So,
Just to clarify the Rashba, if he thinks that Efshar L'Sochto is a Metzias question and it just doesn't happen,
yeah.
then why are we saying that he like Mikra Adin thinks that it's mutar? Like how do you say that Mikra Adin when in Metzias he holds Aser?
I think he says that.
Does he say that?
Yeah, I think he does. Doesn't he say that? Um, I don't have the Rashba in front of me, but maybe we can find it in. I did.
It's quoted in the
Yeah.
Torah.
In as it is in the Torah?
כתב אף על פי שאין חתיכה שבלה איסור נעשה נבלה, ואינו אוסרת אלא לפי חשבון האיסור שבה, אף על פי כן כשנופל לכתירה שיש בה 60 לבטל איסור הבלוע שבה, אין החתיכה חוזרת לקדמותה להתרה, לפי שאיסור שבה אינו נפלט ממנו לגמרי. Right.
Right, but isn't that Efshar L'Sochto Asur?
Oh, no, he doesn't say it's well, okay. It depends how yeah, I guess there's two,
So
um,
it's not efshar sochto asur. It's efshar sochto as
yeah,
asur.
it's,
Yeah,
uh,
but why is that? Maybe we're splitting hairs because it's
yeah, okay.
Efshar sochto is a class of like
No,
hypothetical
sorry, you are right.
frame.
There is actually, I'm thinking back, trying to remember the actual words of the Rashba here. Beyond that, but it's and maybe there's two different understandings of the Rashba. One is when the Gemara says Efshar Sochto Asur, it's because Efshar Sochto doesn't exist as a reality, and the second version is Efshar Sochto Mutar, but it doesn't exist as a reality. I'm not so sure that those two are different.
Yeah,
So
right. Okay. Like, is there a nafkamina case, I guess is the question.
yeah, no,
Is,
I don't
isn't
think.
a similar way to ask this question is how does he read the Gemara about Kachal,
Yes. So, um,
right? Because in that case, don't we have an opinion that Efshar Sochto
yes, exactly.
is real?
Yeah. So, but the Gemara says if it falls into another thing, then it doesn't, then it still infects fully. It depends how you read the Gemara there, but what the maskana is. Yeah, the Taz also gets into this one, I remember, but I
Right.
wasn't going to do him today because it's long. So, but is it the Shah who like
We
complete?
did part of it.
Oh, you did.
Like
Okay.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, with that, I want to do some Shulchan Aruch, if that's helpful on this, and let's see what he has to say. Uh, I'll read. I'll read just a little bit, and then you'll read. You'll get to read some Shach here. This guy's going to do Shulchan Aruch and Shach today. Maybe there was one Taz I wanted to do, but Chaticha shebala isur ve'ein ba shishim levat lo shenafal l'kdera ein oseret ela fi cheshbon isur sheba. Right? So you have exactly the case we were talking about. You have a piece of something, and Isur drops on it hot, and it absorbs the Isur, and it doesn't have 60 to 1 against the Isur, and then it falls into that piece falls into a pot. It only is oser according to how much isur is in it, right? She'im yesh b'kdira mitzuraf ima chatichatzma, and so if in the kedera plus the piece itself, right? We said this with the kachal min aminyan, right? Shishim keneged isur, and you have 60 against the isur habalua, that's absorbed in this piece. Mutar, masha b'kdera, everything in the kedera is mutar. Aval hachatichat sma, and I said everything. I shouldn't have said that. Everything else in the kedera is mutar. Aval hachatichat sma asura. Lefisha isur shaba einani flat mena legamre. This is exactly the Rashba, right? But the piece itself is forever asur because what's in it is never completely spit out, whatever the right word for that is. You know.
And that's even if you couldn't be mevatel it. If you have, if you have a 60 kazayit piece of meat and one kazayit of chalev, it would, I mean,
I know if you have 60 pieces of meat to the chalev, then it is mutar, right? Then the
right.
piece.
That's so the assumption, the unstated assumption here is that you wouldn't be able to be mevatel the chalev, so you have to depend on something else here.
Yeah, well, that's right. Ein bashishim levat lo, right? That's what he says at the beginning of the Shulchan. The
Right.
piece doesn't have 60 against the chalev, let's say. Okay. All right, and then the Ramah there, we can skip. He just quotes everybody. Masha'en ken b'davar nivlal v'nimoach, right? This isn't the case of something that is like mixed into a liquid or dissolved. She'im nafal dam v'chetzebel l'toch rotev, like you drop some blood into a sauce. Shel heter, a permissible sauce. Ve'asro, it forbids it. Mechmat miuto, because there's not enough sauce to be 60 to 1. Ve'achar kach nitra rotev shel heter. And somehow later you've got extra rotev gets added, maybe by accident or whatever it may be. Ad sheyesh ben kulo shishim levatel adam. Now you have 60 against adam. Kulo mutar, everything is mutar. Shakol nivlav v'nitrev, because there everything's mixed up. This is a lach belach case, and there, or even it was maybe it was a yavesh, but the yavesh got dissolved, and now there's no question of like a chaticha that needs to have an efshal sochto question, so that'd be all be permissible. All right, or you look like you're contemplating.
I'm looking at a higher screen to read along.
Oh, okay, yes.
But also I do want to keep clarifying the piece. I guess this is probably going to be in the next achronim we look at, but the piece itself is asur. But what about the case where I cannot remove it because it's confused with other pieces?
You can't remove it because we're going to get there.
because I don't know which it is. Okay, so
Yeah,
That's
we're
what
going to fall
I was gonna
to
say,
another level of Beetle in a sense.
exactly that then the piece becomes batel. We're gonna get there, but
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, that's what I thought.
So, all right, before we go on, let's just, I want to just take a look at two shachs here. Is that the right pluralization of the shach? Two shachs? I don't know. There's only one shach, and it's but he wrote many comments. Just the first one, Aleph Eno Seret Ela Lefi Cheshbon. Was it Lefi Cheshbon Isur Shaba? Max, start us off today.
Okay. Ina aseres el fi cheshbon. Hainu l'das ha-mechaber. Desfira le. Delo amrinan chanan b'shar isurim. Ma she'en kein l'didan. U kmo shemavai harav v'holech. V'ien le'el siman tes, etc., etc. Um, okay, so the idea that you only need bittul against the amount of isser, against the piece of chilav davuk, that is in a no chanan b'shar isurim world. But for us, you're going to need, because it becomes chanan, you're going to need to be mevatel not just the little piece of isser, but the whole thing,
Yeah, good. And
the
that's,
whole piece.
yeah. And we've already seen that. He said it explained earlier. Okay. Um, Aval, Hachatichat Sma Asura, and then keep going with the Shach. Max, you're up.
Okay. Kin kasav Rashba beTorah Sabayis HaRoch daf tzadiches da'afilu l'Rabbeinu Ephraim v'siyaso delo amrinan chanan b'shar isurim efshar l'soch to aser. So even in the no chanan b'shar isurim world, efshar l'soch to is aser v'achaticha atzma le'olam asura, and the piece is always going to be forbidden. V'chein kasav harbe poskim v'chein haskamas ha'achoronim, and a lot of agreement on that point. V'yesh poskim de hu hadin efshar l'sochto nami mutzer. But some think that you can split the difference and say efshar l'sochto is mutter.
Mhm.
V'lo kaimalan hachi. But um, I guess we don't hold like that.
Yeah, because we there is weird
Right.
because it's not we. It's like we as in like the Shulchan
Yeah.
Aruch doesn't hold that. But yeah.
Right.
So,
Right. Or that was not brought down, I guess.
yeah.
Mihu ledidan de kaimalan chanan bechol ha'isurim pshita de l'kulei alma hachaticha lo'olam asura. So, but for us, it doesn't even, the question doesn't really even get off the ground, um, because it's chanan, and so um, you can't say efshar l'sochto mutter and also chanan.
Hanan. So those
Yeah.
two don't work together. You can say, as we've seen, you can say Shalasok to Asur. Maybe that is the right formulation of the Rashba. Although for some reason I think remember somewhere in his commentary he seems to think it actually is mutar, it just doesn't think it's reality. Um, but uh,
Yeah.
but that you can say Shalasok to Asur, but nonetheless you can say Hanan. It does not exist in Shar Assyrian, but you can't say Efshar Lesochto. You can't say Hanan and not say Efshar Lesochto Asur, right? At the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
Who says if Shar Sochta Mutar?
um,
Kind of the Torah.
yeah. See, I
But
am.
In the Gemara, it was just a how
Oh,
would we
no,
have the question? Was it an opinion
but um,
in the Kachal case?
in the Kachal case, no, but it shows up in the Gemara as a debate. It shows
Right.
up.
I'm just
It
trying to
shows,
figure out whose sheet that would have been.
yeah. Um, but and I can't remember right now who says what. So. But yeah, when did I make myself a chart? No, I made myself one. But no, no, that was my chart of Kavush and how long it takes. But never mind. I have little charts somewhere in various places. All right, I apologize for not remembering that fact of who says what. I should have prepared.
I'm gonna look it up on the side here if I can.
Good. That's all right. What did I want to do next? I wanted to keep going. We've got it. So now let's go to the Ramah in Seif Aleph. Ulefi mashino agim lomar bechol yisrim chatichana nevela. Ein chiluk ben devar lach u'devar yavesh. Yeah, right. He says now, but we say Hanan, and therefore that whole Ashala Sochto discussion doesn't make a difference to us, and it doesn't matter if it's Lach or Yavesh. De'ima Nesar Kvarhu Devar Yavesh, right? So that if the thing that was forbidden, right, is still, I'll say a dry thing, a solid thing, V'yesh Yisim Kenegdo, right? And there's 60 against it. Hachaticha haneseret tchila nisharet bisura, right? The piece that it was first became asur stays in its isura. V'tzarich lasira misham imakira, right? And you need to remove it, but if you recognize it. Um, V'im eno makira betela im ena chaticha realit kabed. We'll get into that addition there. And if you don't recognize it's betela, as long as it's not a chaticha realit kabed, essentially what we're going to say is that has to be the case of basar bechalav because we actually said it can't be a chaticha realit kabed if it's because of an isur that it's that's baluaba. All right. Ve'imu davar lach, right? But if it's something that's a liquid, hakol mutar me'achar de'ika shishim neged mashnes rab tchila, right? Then you have 60, as long as you have 60 against the liquid that fell in, then everything is mutar, and then you go back to Sadi Bet and Sadi Tet to go see that. We haven't done Sadi Bet yet, but okay.
There's no chanan when there's no chaticha.
Well.
Well, that's what I'm inferring from this. There's no.
I no, it's actually a big question.
But the Ramaz agreeing that this sauce, once it mixes, it's not holding, it didn't disperse the original Isser in that intermediate, mix.
Yeah, I was listening to something and someone brought up the case of like a carrot in chicken soup,
Yes.
and you take the carrot out of the chicken soup, and then it goes into either if you eat that carrot, are you fleischigs?
Mhm.
But if the carrot then goes into a parv soup, how does it impact the parv soup, if at all? Like
Yeah.
that's a question of
Still a
not a
chaticha.
That's a not per not question, really. So
but if there's no way of getting the meat, I guess that's true. If there's no way of getting the meat out of the carrot, then
yeah.
could it also be a Efshar Lesotho question on the carrot?
Yeah. It's in other words, it's always has the meat in it. Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
some things. The meat flavor has been weakened at this point. And
right.
the other thing, it's in kosher chicken soup, so it's actually a different case because there's no nevela.
Time's not Isser.
That's part of the
Right.
problem there.
No,
Well,
but the
I guess,
question then
but
becomes is the parv soup now fleischigs?
Good. It may operate at a slightly different axis, right? No one would say even if you hold Hanan, you wouldn't say that the whole soup becomes. Let's say there's 60 against the Isur that's Balua ba, right? The chicken, not Isur. There's no Isur. The chicken soup that's Balua in the carrot, but there's not 60 against the carrot, right?
can you eat the carrot?
You'd say the soup is parv. Uh,
Right.
so.
But then what is the status of the carrot?
Good. Is it fleishich? In other words, like if you
Right.
eat the carrot, can you then eat
Right.
Cheese.
milchiks after? Yeah, so that's we'll see this later. The Rama actually brings an opinion that tarovet basar doesn't count for a wait time. Uh and he says we don't hold that. He says we don't that's not our custom, but that is an opinion he brings actually.
Hmm.
So but we do say tarovet, right? As long as it's not 60 against it, it would make you fleishich. In general. So,
So my question is from the Ramaz perspective, is this whole Siman sort of redundant or unnecessary? Because if you hold by Chana B'Shari Surin, then all of this discussion doesn't really it's really kind of irrelevant. It's like we're just going to fall back to what we learned with Basar B'Chalav, and it's the same thing with any time you have this forbidden thing, like where
yes.
you've got something that's forbidden. So now the whole Siman is kind of extra. So how does he approach, like, for example, the Tur and the Rosh, who felt that this was somehow
Oh, because the Torah holds that you don't have Hanan and Bishar Yisur. That's what it comes down to, and the Ramad does. Yeah, so it does. It makes this all irrelevant. I've heard people, and I think it's an error, but I'm not that they claim that essentially the Ramaz Shita is to make all of Isser V'Heter easier. right? And to have these kind of easier rules. I don't know if that's right. He doesn't, right? Remember, if you remember, right, we don't differentiate between kachush and shamen in the Ramaz world, for instance, right? In terms of pipua, we don't. We just say chanan in everything. I don't know. Like, there's places where it makes things more complicated, actually, and we'll get into some of those. But it's an argument I've heard people make. And by the way, by people, I mean, like the kind of the Rav Elisha Chilovich school. Ori, go ahead.
Well, I was waiting to see if it was going to recognize my hand in Zoom. Like a timer came out.
Wait,
Uh,
can you do that? Hold on.
Apparently.
I,
Can you
I
see
must
it?
not have it set. We're all gonna be. Someone's gonna watch this
I
video.
just saw this blue bar go around.
Yeah.
I'm going to lower my hand. Um, okay, but there is something here. So the Haggah is saying that it is Hanan for liquids if it imakira, right? Which I
Hmm.
feel like I don't completely understand that case, but fine. How I can still, I mean, I guess it could be oil and water or something. That would be a lach belach where I could still makira and remove it.
Oh, well, yeah.
What's
Oil
a
of
lach case where I still see? I'm thinking of the dam case of the
oh,
sauce going into
no,
it.
no, oh, no. We saw that actually, right? We saw that case where you have to put water in to get rid of the fat, right? The to make the fat rise
Bubble
above.
up.
Yeah, if you drop some fat into soup that's not kosher, you have to separate it out.
But he's saying imakira. Like he's not saying
That was what, and we saw that that was seen as makira, right? That case.
so makira is of shar lahakira.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's fine. And then he says, but then he says, imu davar lacha kol mutar, if you don't recognize, if you can't see it, then you, even with Hanan, it's still okay. Mechar diika samach neged mashana esrat tchila, because we have 60 against the original little bit of Isser.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is related to Hanan or not, but it's sort of like it's Hanan, but only to a point.
Yes, well, we're going to get into. So he says at the beginning, right? Right. What we have, he said, "B'chol yizim chateran senavila, ein chiluk ben davar lach ledavar yavesh." He says, "I see no difference in that case." We're going to
Imakira.
Yeah, there is a difference, but he says ve'im eina chatichar yalid kabed ve'im hu davar lach, right? Hakol mutar me'achar diika shishim neged mashis. As long as you have 60 against the isur, whatever the isur is, we'll see how much you count as the isur in a lach case. Then you don't have to get rid of anything. It's just mutar, right?
But
There's no.
we're just back with Beetle again. We're falling back to another
Yeah, what I'm
case.
saying is, even though it's Hanan with liquids, there's a high likelihood it's not going to be Makira, and therefore it's not going to answer the whole pot. So is
Oh,
that a part of the
no,
Haggah?
no. Yeah, so here's what he means here. We're gonna get into this. Let's say I have it's one of the, I think it's the shach that gets into this. Let's pretend I have some chicken soup and I drop some, we'll make it for everybody, not just the Ramah here. I drop some milk into it, right? My chicken soup. It doesn't have a 61 ratio. All right. And now well, actually, I don't want to use milk and meat. I drop some chalev into it and I don't have a 61 ratio. I then accidentally pour that soup into another vat of soup, right? Because maybe I didn't,
Yeah, that's
and
our case. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so the question is, what ratio do I need, right? And the
Mm.
Ramah's saying I need 60-1 against that chicken soup
Because Hanan.
because Hanan.
Because Hanan. But guess what? Im eno makiro, that Hanan's going to go out the door. That's what I'm saying here. Imu davar lacha kol mutar is referring to the im eno makira version of the lach belach. Am I
Oh
wrong about
no,
that?
no, I don't think
Am I
it's
talking about
no.
Chatichari Ali Kabed?
No, I think he's talking about the realika bed there. There he's talking about a chaticha. Imeno makira doesn't. If I know I don't recognize the chicken soup anymore, it's a 60 to it's less than a 61 ratio. It's asur.
וצריך להסירה משם ממכירה, ואם אינו מכירה בטלה.
Hmm.
What does that mean? אם אינו מכירה בטלה.
Yeah. In other words, let's
In the
imagine.
lach case.
No, that's not the lach case. That's just that's the yavesh case. That's the iman esar kvarhu devar yavesh, right? That's what we're talking about. Right? There's two cases. Let me show you how to read the Ramah here. This is why I think the way.
Yeah, I'm lost.
Yeah. Right. He says it doesn't matter if it's lach, it doesn't matter if it's yavesh. All right.
That's
Eli
nice.
in linyanze. Case one, if it's an SR, if the thing that became forbidden is a yavesh thing, right? And there's 60 against the chaticha, right? That was initially became asur. The chaticha stays in its state of isur, even though the thing that it fell into is now mutar because there were 60 against the chaticha, and you need to remove the chaticha because it's still asur, right? That's if you recognize the chaticha. But if you don't recognize the chaticha, then it's betela berov, right? It's,
Oh, but you have 60 against the whole piece in that case anyways.
exactly, yes, right.
Okay.
And all right, the one exception if it's really kabed, so there's no bitul. All right. The imu davar lach, but now what if it's not a yavesh? What if it's a davar lach that fell in, right?
Yeah.
As long as you have 60 against the soup that became asur, then you're okay. And then there's no, you don't have to
Okay, so
remove.
I got confused because the language of Masha Nesrat Chila sounds a little bit like Habaluaba,
Oh, yes. No,
but
no,
that's not what he means. He means
no.
the composite sauce.
Yes, that was initially became
That makes sense.
asur, and what you don't have to do is remove the soup anymore because now you have a 60-1 ratio against the chicken soup that fell in. You don't have to find it, which how do you remove the soup? You can't. That's the whole point, and so therefore you don't say it's asur because you can't remove it, right? That kind of thing. So
But it's a normal case of Betul, like we had the whole thing Isser. Like if that was a whole, if it was a whole actual Isser that went in
y-
and Eno Makira, it would still be the same law.
exactly. Yes.
It
So
would just be Shishim.
yeah. Okay. Sorry? That was good. Was that helpful way to help us understand that Ramah there? That's,
I
yeah.
mean,
So again, I just want to summarize it again. If you have a piece of something that falls um, uh, into an isur, as into a heter, as long as you have 60 against the piece, the heter still remains in its heter state, but you have to remove the piece if you can find it, if you can recognize it, really, not if you could separate it out. If you can't separate it out, it will be batel, right? So like there's a bunch of pieces of meat, and one of them has chaylev on it, and becomes asur because it absorbs chaylev, and then it gets dropped into this thing. You have to remove that piece still. But if you don't recognize, well, which one absorbed the chaylev, that has chaylev on it, absorbed the chaylev, then or maybe it did have chaylev on it, and this chaylev melts and goes all over, then it's batel and all the other pieces, right? Was the idea here. But if it's something like you have some soup that became asur because something dropped into it, and then that soup gets dropped into other soup, then you need 60-1 against the entire the soup that got dropped in. But as long as you have 60-1 against, you don't have to remove anything, right? Because there's nothing to remove at that point. But we'll see. By the way, hopefully we'll get to this. But the whole lach belach. If you remember back in a while back, we actually tried to solve a problem in the Ramah by saying that maybe there isn't Hanan in lach belach. We're going to see Meikar. I think he doesn't actually think so, but that he, or at least that's what we hold. But and therefore in Hefsed Merubeh cases, we like that again that soup case. You have chicken soup, kosher chicken soup. You some chaylev drops into it, gets absorbed. You don't have a 60-1 ratio. That's supposedly would be Hanan. And then drop that soup into more chicken soup, and you're like gonna lose all of Shabbos dinner, and it's very expensive. I don't know. You're having a wedding, I don't know, whatever it may be. Then we wouldn't say Hanan in that case, and you just have to have 60-1 against the chaylev that originally dropped into that first amount of chicken soup.
So we have the Hefsed Meruba axis as well.
Yes, for lach belach only, right? Not for
I think there's some other Hanan cases we saw earlier in the year. There's a pattern here I remember just emerging. There are some borderline cases in where, which is why we were saying there was that discussion of if the Ramah is really full Hanan or he's basically no Hagin Hanan.
yes.
Therefore, if you really push me in a Hefsed Meruba or something, there may be some borderline cases.
Yeah,
Just-
the
I,
lach
I don't
belach,
remember what case, but I'm
the
pretty
lach
sure.
belach is one of the big ones, right? The lach belach we don't really hold Hanan. So
That Hefsed Meruba Ramah is only Shari Sorin, right? It's not Basar Chalav.
yes, only Shari Surim as far as that. Yes. So, um, but I think everyone agrees that the Karhadin in Basar B'Chalav, because the whole point is that the way Rabbeinu Ephraim explains it, Basar B'Chalav becomes the new thing, right? It's like it's not a piece of Basar that absorbs Chalav isn't a piece of Basar that absorbs Chalav. It's a piece of Basar and Chalav, right? It's a new identity to it. Um, that's what
Which is
makes
why it's relevant for the also for the the chaticha hariyala leis kabed piece because it can't be balua.
Exactly. We're gonna see that I'm trying to think about my time here. But let's with that, let's see. But mm, yeah, okay, actually here we go. Let's look at the Shach Gimel. Eitan, read the Shach Gimel.
Okay. ולפי מה שנוהגים לומר בכל האיסורים, חתיכה נעשית נבלה, פירש,
Or
וגם
Perush, I think. Yeah.
הפירוש, וגם בנתערב איסור לך בהתר לך, אמרינן חנן, בשאר איסורים, במקום שאין הפסד גדול. כמו שכתב בהגה, סימן צדי ב', סמך ד', אין חילוק וכולי.
Yes. I think it's Sif Daled, but yeah.
Sif Dalet. So this is the explanation that it's also when you have an isur that's lach mixed with a heter that's lach, we say chanan in shar isurim, when there is hefsed gadol.
Yeah.
And the Hagar wrote this in Siman Tzadibet.
Exactly. So
When there is or when there isn't.
when there's not only when there's not a hefsed
Right.
gadol. So you
Right,
can
yeah.
not only applies in lach balach when there's no hefsed gadol. When there's hefsed gadol, it doesn't apply.
So in a sense, he's looking at lach balach is a chumrah case, and as you said earlier, Meikar Din, it doesn't necessarily hold it.
Exactly. Yeah. So because we know it's like an important thing to say is when we say like you're allowed to do this because of hefsed merubeh or hefsed or zman dechak and all that stuff. It's or b'diavad, it's not because mikar hadin l'lachatchila is true. It's because that's a chumrah on, or a not ideal situation. But mikar hadin, it's allowed. It's that's the way all of these exceptions work. Or often sometimes we'll play it out. If it's a derabanan, we'll say the rabbis were not gozer in such and such case, right? They weren't gozer in a case of hefsed merubah, or they weren't gozer in a case of I don't know, my pronunciation's all they weren't Gozer or Gozerim I mean, like I grew up with Sephardic pronunciation. I ought to be able to use it right. It's so but I come by that. I know Max uses Ashkenazi pronunciation, but I'm a good Ashkenazi Jew. But I asked my father about this once, and he said, "Yeah, but when I was a kid, he said that all my teachers at the Harkham Hill Hebrew it wasn't Harkham yet, Hill Hebrew Academy in Los Angeles were all Israelis, transplants, so they all spoke like Israelis. So it's my father's fault that I speak the way I do. So, but
There are reasons I do what I do.
I know. It's but all right. Let's go on to bet. And so Dalit is. I just want to say the Shach and Dalit. It's good, but I don't think we have time to do it. He says, right? He says, wait a second. If it's Balu with Chalev, Chatichar Yalit Kabed doesn't apply. So it must be the Basar B'chalav case only that he's talking about there. So it's like a favorite thing of the Achronim to do, if you ever noticed, is to like jump all over the Ramah for being consistent as a writer. They jump on the Shulchan Mechaber too, but they really love to jump on the Ramah about it. I don't know why. I'm not sure if that's shows their respect for the Ramah in some ways, and like there's no way he can be saying things that are wrong, or they notice that maybe the Ramah is I don't know if he's a less careful writer than the Mechaber. I think part of it, and this is my own kind of take, is I think sometimes we get confused because the Ramah also wasn't it was kind of written as like a running commentary and an outside book on the Shulchan Aruch, and so it just like wasn't written to be a book the same way the Shulchan Aruch was. It's um, it does it's not a standalone document. Let's put it that way. It's, okay. Let me read Bet because I wanted to get there, and then we'll go back to a couple more Achronim, and then we'll move on to Shabbos, right? חתיכה שיש בה חלב שנתבשלה בקדירה, שיש בה 60 מבטל החלב. So you have a piece of meat that has chalev attached to it, and it gets cooked in a pot with 60 when there is 60 against the chalev. צריך לזהר שלא יסיר שום דבר מהקדירה בעוד חתיכת האיסור בתוכה. Right? Make sure you don't remove anything from the kedera when the chaticha with the chalev attached to it is still there, right? What he means is when it's still hot. The chashinan Shema tishe'er b'achrona b'shah she'ein b'k'tira shishim levatel chelev. Why? Because I may scoop a bunch of the pieces of, let's say I have a bunch of pieces of meat, 100 pieces of meat, and I have this one piece that's chelev attached to it, and I scoop out a bunch of pieces of meat, and I go put them in my bowl to eat them, and now I'm left with only, a ratio of 50 to 1 against the chelev all of a sudden, and that sounds like a problem. Now I've made everything asur. Um, but V'gam lo yotziena tchila, and also I shouldn't take that piece with the chalev stuck to it out first. Shechalev shabaya soroto, because it's still sizzling hot, and now I'm going to make that piece asur because of the chalev that's attached to it. All right. Uma takanata. So what's my fix? How do I solve this? Yani chena ad shetitstanena kadera. I leave it until the kadera cools down, and then there's no worries when I take things out that anything become asur. Right. You can see here the Mechaber doesn't hold Isur Davuk. Right. Well, you can see this, right? But because his Gam Lo Yotziena Tchila implies that he thinks at this point that that piece that had the chalev attached to it is still mutar. The chalev isn't mutar, obviously, but the piece is mutar. So. Okay, Haga, and the Rama adds, Ulefi maj de kaimel and chaticha nase nevila, mesira chaticha surah misham vashar mutar. And he says, since we hold Hanan, right, he here is assuming Isur Davuk in his thing. He doesn't say that explicitly. But you just take the chaticha that's asur out, and everything else becomes mutar. Right, nice and simple. Good. Let's read a little bit.
I have a
Yeah.
clarifying question on the Machaber. If and sort of a Matthias question, but I think it's sort of implied. If I let it cook and it cooks and cooks and cooks, I don't remove anything from the pot. In the first case,
Yeah.
I could at some point, can't I remove some of the mixture because the bittul has already happened? And
The
it's not localized the Isser anymore. It's all, so if any piece I take out, it's taking out 1/60th Isser and 59
um,
parts
yeah.
Heter.
I think he must be talking about a case, I think, where you can still see the chalev.
Yeah, he's talking about in the beginning of the cooking process. That's why I'm saying it. It's like the
Yeah.
assumption here is it's still separate. It's about to happen. If you take something out, it's not going to happen. The bitul, the cooking.
Yeah. If the chalev melts completely into everything and there's no trace of it left, then yes, I believe that'd be fine because you assume that it has been mefafeh bechulo at that point. So
And then at that point, I could also take that piece out for greater. I mean, I need to take the piece out still anyway, don't I?
not according to the Mechaber.
Um,
That piece is
no, going back to the first, it's not the same as the Aleph.
no, because remember again, the piece had chalev attached to it, but it was cold. It never has absorbed the chalev. Uh, there is
I'm
this,
saying after we let everything cook,
yeah.
we let everything cook. I still have a piece that Eyev Shar L'Sochto, like
Well,
the
no, but
Rashba.
why? When did it absorb the chalev?
While it cooked.
Because it all cooked together. You're saying so that chaylev is going to the whole pot, not just to the piece. I
That
see. It wasn't like it was cooked outside of the pot first. That's our first case.
yes.
This is all in the pot. Now, if I believe davukbo, maybe it would change that because it would sort of cook to that piece more locally first.
Exactly. You've hit everything now. Yes, this is perfect. Look, there's a big question. If you may have seen this in the Beit Yosef, but it shows that he has a solution. A lot of people have a solution. There's a lot of questions. Wait a second. Wasn't the meat salted with the challah first? And then doesn't it absorb then? And and so there's different solutions. Maybe it was it was salted with all the pieces with like a big hunk of meat with the chalev attached, and then after you salted it, you chopped it into little pieces, and only one piece was left with the chalev attached to it, or something like that. Or that's the Beit Yosef solution, if I remember correctly. There's other solutions as to how to deal with the salting issue, maybe. But for the moment, we won't worry so much about the salt. That question. The assumption is the piece has not absorbed the chalev when it gets thrown into the pot at this point. So, but
Cool.
let's look. Did I want to do? Yeah, let's actually. Yeah, no, let's do. What did I want to do first? Now I gotta remember. Yeah, I want to do the Taz first, actually. We haven't done any Taz. Josie, take the Taz bet. V'lo tziena tchila shechelev sheba yesoroto.
וגם לא ציין התחילה שחלב שבה יסורתו. משמע, דאם יניחנה תהא מותרת, ולא דמי למה שכתב בסעיף א', דהחתיכה נשארת באיסורה, דהתם נאסרה החתיכה כבר על ידי בליעה. על זה.
But yeah, al ze amar.
I'm sorry, בליעה. So just
Yeah,
this
this
is
is
the case we
Ori's.
just
This is
this is
Ori's
Ori's
question.
question. This is
Yeah,
it. This
yeah.
is the case in Sif Aleph. We talked about something hot where the fat fell on it and it spread out and it made the piece.
Hmm.
Right. And this is, it starts cold, so we have a cold pot, we're cooking it, and then the fat, this chalev that's attached to this piece of meat, at the kidney or whatever we're cooking, spreads out evenly throughout.
Yeah. So al ze, because on the first case over in Sifalef, al
Yeah.
ze amar she'ena
על זה
polit.
אמר שאינה
Yeah.
פולטת כל האיסור הבלוע, מה שאם כן כאן, שלא בלעה מחלב שעליה, מחלב עדיין, אלא עכשיו, על ידי בישול, ובאותה שעה הולכת פליטת הבליעה בכל הגדרה בשווה. כמו באותה חתיכה עצמה, כיוון דלפי סברה זו, לא אמרין החתיכה עצמה נעשה נבלה בשאר יישום, וזה פשוט. So this is exactly the case we just talked about.
Exactly. That's the we don't even need to
So
translate it.
congratulations for the Tots.
Exactly. Nice job, Ori. The Taz
Baruch
session.
Shekivani, that's what my rabbis
Yeah.
would say. Yep.
Rosh Givanti, right? Good job. That you got the Taz. So okay. Let's do with that. I wanted to look at Vav in the Shach. Shechev Sheba Yesorota. That was the one I wanted. Actually, no. Let's look at Hay. I want to look at Hay in the Shach first. Let's see. Eitan, you haven't read yet, right?
I read a little bit. I'm
Oh,
happy.
you read. Ori, have you read?
Nope.
All right, you do Hay, and then I may have to go right after. We'll do maybe two more, and then I have to go.
Hey in the Shach,
Yeah,
שיש בה 60 לבטל החלב.
yeah.
Okay. ולדידן דקיימה לן חנן בכל האיסורים, וכן באיסור דבוק, צריך 60 נגד כל החתיכה. הוא הדין, צריך 60 נגד כל החתיכה שהחלב דבוק בה, ואפילו אפילו החתיכה עצמה אסורה. Okay, so this, according to him, you hold Hanan and all Isurin, and it's also Isur Davuk. So you need 60 against the entire piece. And that's the law. You need 60 against the whole piece because the chalev is stuck to it. And then, of course, the big difference will be that the whole piece is sorry.
Exactly.
Piece itself will remain usher, but in the machaber, if you leave everything be, everything will get bittul.
Yeah. So,
I do the procedural question that comes up is funny. If you're really in this case,
mhm.
and I think that's sort of maybe how it's written. It's not written, hey, just let it go on hot and the whole thing will be mevutal. My option is leave the fire on and let it all mevatel, or cool it down. Then I can remove my piece. Like that's the firmer thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Even though it would be mutter if I let it keep cooking, the better thing would be to let it cool because right? And then I can actually remove the piece with the chalev. What you shouldn't do is the middle option, which is to remove it right away while it's hot.
Yeah.
It's an
Well, no,
interesting case.
if you hold Hanan and you hold,
Well, I
or
meant in the Mechaber, yeah.
yeah, the Machaber, yes, that's the case. So,
The Mechaber is telling you don't pull it out right away, cool it down. But
yeah.
he could have also said just don't do anything, let it stay hot, and it will all mevatel out. But then
Yeah.
I'll never have to take the piece out in that.
I want to think about that case because if you recognize, if you're not mivatel b'yadayim anymore, but if you recognize it, like you look in the pot and you see it in there, um, can you allow it to melt in? I don't know the answer. I have to think about that.
You're not allowed to just take it out, right? Because that would be worse.
The machaber, yes.
Oh, would it be worse? No, it would just mean you can't eat that piece ever.
Yeah, well, so this is interesting. I'm
It's
trying
not
to
going to
remember.
ruin your pot if you take it out.
Someone says this, and I can't remember where it is, that there seems to be the Mechaber this thing about that you can't allow an Easter to be created, right? That you have to kind of avoid that. Because it's like, well, okay, so I took the piece out, I just throw it away. What's the big deal? So take the piece out first, throw it away, and you're done. Um, and so that there is kind of some fear of an Easter being created here, like allowing it to.
That's that makes me really understand this better when he writes umata kanta takanata.
Mhm.
How do I fix the situation? Because I just said, don't take anything out. The chashinan shemati shebarachanu, then we won't have enough to do the bittul. So
Yeah,
what am I going to do? I have an isser in the pot.
yeah.
I have to let it all cool down, then I can take it out.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who says that and where I saw that. But there is an idea of like not allowing an Easter to be created. So at the end of the day, um,
Well, it's not isser created in the same sense of basar v'chalav. It's
no, it's an allow. In other words, like you see that you have a case where it's like, well, if I just took that piece out first, that would solve all my problems. I can leave everything hot. I don't have to let everything cool down. But that seems to be a problem to the mechaber. Um,
it's a Metzius problem
But
because if I pull it out, what
mhm.
if some of the chalev already fell off my piece? It's in the pot. But when I take out this big piece, I now don't have 60, even maybe against the chalev that fell in. You see what I'm
Oh, I
saying?
don't think that's his concern, right?
So I could take it out and throw it out, and you think it would be okay?
No, he says no. V'gam lo yisenu techila shechilev sheba yesor ota, because the chilev that's on that piece will make that piece asur.
I understand. So, but if I'm willing to accept the loss of the piece that I took out,
But
can
he's
I
not
save
willing
the
to.
soup?
Yes, that and he's not willing to accept that. That's his whole thing. And so,
Like the monetary loss. Better to play this out correctly.
but
It's a very
I
interesting case. It's very rich. It's not just like a normal case.
no. Um,
I also don't know if that can count as letting it cook. I don't know if that is creating an isser.
yeah, that's the thing. That's no linear cook. I don't think it's creating an isur, right? It's letting it actually be. It's getting rid of an isur. I'm curious about like whether or not that's allowed in terms of is that
Yeah.
like tell lechatchila. You
Or
right
if
now.
it's just like
What about
acceptable
adding water?
harama.
It's but yes, maybe it's acceptable harama. That's so
I don't know.
What
yeah.
about adding water? Is that levatal isur lechatchila?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I doubt
that's
it.
not that's always be'adayim. That's for
Not
sure.
in this case. I already have 60. I'm just
Oh, you don't
adding
know if you already have 60 and then adding water so that you can guarantee you have 60. Yeah, that's an interesting.
a
That would
really
seem to
interesting
work.
case.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
seem to also work. But yeah, I just want to see if I can see Tisha Arizona. Yeah, the feeling of Kvar Irav, we're going to get into that question next week. Yeah, we're going to get into more of this next week with cooking eggs and fish. Then you cook a lot of them together and
These two simanim do like really go together quite nicely, and it makes me wonder why they're separated.
yeah.
And also gets back to your question about how to title this siman in the first place.
Mhm. So I actually think that they're separated because I don't know that the tour understands. He's not 100% sure about the smug and this whole thing with fish. Like I think everyone's a little bit
Mhm.
weirded out by like what's his actual. No one can figure out what his actual problem is, and so they have to kind of create what the problem is with the
Yeah.
fish. So we'll
You
get
have to
into that.
explain that. I don't know what you're talking about with the smog and the fish.
Oh, good. That's next week. That's next. I sent out sources, right? I sent out.
Sorry, so yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
I see. You're
Yeah.
saying this would have gone well with next week's Siman.
Yeah, the two are very attached to each other, no pun intended. They're davuk one to the next, without a doubt. All right, this is where I probably have to drop off. But good. I think we got
All
some
right.
good
Thank
concepts.
you so much.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
You.
And
Yeah.
I'll
All
see
right.
everybody on Monday. Yishkoch.
Bye.